Hey guys, and welcome back to another episode of the Airbnb Nomads podcast. You're here with me, Alex, and the main man, Mr. Pooh. And on this week's Property Education Masterclass, we are joined by the one and only Darren O'Reilly. Now, Darren is a property veteran. He's done pretty much every single strategy that is out there. And today we're going to be discussing his journey from the very beginning to where he is today. So stay tuned. I guarantee you are going to learn a lot in this episode. Here we go. This week we are joined by the very important one and only Mr. Darren O'Reilly. Darren is a full-time property investor. He's heavily involved in Airbnb serviced accommodation and all different types of strategies, and we're welcoming him here today. So welcome, Darren.
Welcome, Darren. Woohoo!
Thank you, guys. Thank you for that big intro. Appreciate that. Good to see you, Alex and Pooh.
Thanks for joining us, buddy. And you're just back from a holiday, right? We looked on your social media, saw that you've been away somewhere.
Yeah, well, you could call it that. I mean, Benidorm with the lads, four sort of five 50-year-olds trying to relive their 18, sort of relive their 20s.
Hey, man, you're only as old as you feel, and you feel 60, right?
I did after that, yeah. Quick, it's an interesting place, lovely little towns, and then you got the sort of craziness of the Benidorm Strip, which of course, when in Rome, you got to do as the Romans do. We had to visit it, but yeah, it's not somewhere I'm going to have on my list of places to go again.
Yeah, not too much Spanish culture in Benidorm. It's not the most authentic place.
No, previously,
long time ago.
Yeah, no, I wish I had. I would have probably been a different type of holiday. But yeah, prior to that, 10 days before that, I was in Dubai and then back home and then off to Benidorm. And it was like, yeah, completely different contrast.
Tell us your story about your trip to Dubai. And was it the shopping mall with the beach?
Yeah, no, the shopping mall with the aquarium. Yeah, you literally
with the aquarium.
I don't like getting dragged around shopping malls, but in Dubai it's slightly different. One, because it's like 40 degrees heat outside, and all the shopping malls are air conditioned, so you have to go in them just to keep cold anyway. And then we went round, and it literally you got H&M and Boots or Smiths or whatever. Everyone is out there, and then literally you're walking along, and to the left there's someone scuba diving in a massive aquarium.
Wow!
And then you're queuing up to go in an aquarium, which we've done, and you know, I mean, and it's not a small aquarium either. The mall probably, I'm trying to think, it must be, I'd hazard a guess, it's 40, 50 football pitches at least in size over sort of 2 or 3 floors.
My goodness.
So you can imagine the size of the aquarium. I think they did say, I can't remember how many litres it was, but yeah, people are scuba diving in it and they're dropping, it was a good sort of 30 foot they're dropping. And they're waving at you while people are just walking out of M&S with their salty weekly shop. It was insane.
Brilliant.
That was one of them.
Do you know what I just watched? I just watched The Meg 2. Have you seen The Meg?
Yeah.
I think there's one scene where this massive shark just staring at the, like a girl or guys just watching, through the glass, and
yeah, it's similar.
Yeah. Oh my goodness.
Right, so Darren, as I kind of introduced you at the beginning, obviously this podcast is, heavily based around property, around Airbnb specifically, about how people can kind of create a better life for themselves, more money, more freedom, better quality of life for themselves, for their family. And that's why we like to have people on that, are either on their way or have got there. And, I think you're doing pretty well. So why don't you tell us a little bit about your background, where you've come from, why you're in property, what you was doing before property, and kind of what your vision is, where you're trying to get to.
Yeah, no worries. I mean, if you want to sort of roll it right back, I'll try and paraphrase it so we don't drag it out too long. But I was, out of school, wanted to be a Formula One technician, went in to study BTEC motor vehicle technology, and then quickly from there fell into mechanics role. That was where we got started. Quickly realised that was just very much a sort of fitter's role, just changing brake pads and bits and bobs. Got made redundant 3-4 times out of that. And then from there, just done an odd few jobs here and there. My mum and dad were into property, had bought and renovated property throughout their lives. I was the baby of 5, so by the time I come along, they were sort of slowing down a little bit, but they basically advised me to keep hold of anything that I bought, which is pretty much what I've done. So I was, I've lost track, so I was a mechanic for a few years, then became like a builder, labourer, done office removals. Then I'm trying to work out my journey from there, blimey. It was only 10 years ago, but it's difficult to remember, you know.
Yeah, I'm the same. It's hard remembering dates, different chapters of life. Yeah, I get it.
But, we're rolling back about 30 odd years. I struggled to remember what happened yesterday.
So there was property in your family, though. I mean, it was around you. You was growing up with it. You was hearing kind of, you was getting it kind of cemented into your head that it was a good way forward. It was going to give you some security and, something you was interested in.
Oh, 100%. Yeah, I mean, probably the age of 6, 7, 8 or whatever, I was scraping off the old chipboard wallpaper.
Yeah, I all remember that.
Yes, I was always in and out of properties when I was younger. My mum and dad were always doing bits and pieces. My dad had his own suspended ceiling business as well, so that used to help him out quite a bit on that as well. But the weekends, quite happily we'd be round houses doing this, that, and everything.
Did you have to get involved with putting tenants in, collecting money, collecting rent and stuff like that, or?
Yeah, I mean, if we fast forward, as I grew up, I bought my first property at 20. I was 20 years old.
It's unheard of these days, eh? It's more like 50 years old now. People are buying their first property.
Yeah. Well, that was an investment property as well. So my brother runs an entertainment agency, and he's 6 years older than me. So when I was sort of reaching my teens, I was out DJing with him, being his roadie, doing karaoke, sound engineering and bits and pieces. And then subsequently we had, at that time it was vinyl. If the listeners, you've probably got an array of listeners, but hopefully they all remember what vinyl is or familiar what it is. So where I'm going with that is we actually bought a record collection from someone. We bought over 5,000 singles, 7-inch singles. We took out what we wanted and then invited a load of friends round to have a look at what was left and see if we could sell it on. And then we had probably a good 20 or 30 friends come round, took their few bits, and we thought, that's a good idea. Why don't we open a record shop? Wow. And that's where the first investment come along. We then, at the time as well, we bought the property, which I've still got, and we bought it for the shop, and it had a flat above, so it's a commercial unit, and pretty much the flat money at the time, the rental, we rented the flat out, and we basically paid the mortgage. Pretty much the rent covered the mortgage, so it was a well, if I look at it, I wouldn't say no money down. We put in a bit of savings, but pretty much it was a HMO. We got a shop for free basically, so we was just put all the records in, run that for 5 years, and then vinyl demised and CDs come about and basically couldn't compete with the big boys. So then we just decided to rent the shop out.
I think a lot of people might be listening to that and thinking, well, good for you, that you did that. But, the idea, you kind of, sometimes it gets breezed over about, well, I just went out and bought that place. How did that happen? How did you accumulate the funds? Was it just through hard work and saving, being responsible? Because most people now, like we know, they live kind of week to week, paycheck to paycheck. The idea of buying a place, it's not even an afterthought. So how did all that come about? How was you able to buy that place, and get started?
Yeah, so originally, back in them days, it was easy to loan money. You could literally, my mum and dad had a good relationship with a bank manager, and pretty much it was, we all put in, we put in 30,000. The property was 80 grand when we bought it. We all put in, so my mum and dad put in 10.
Yeah.
My brother put in 10, and I was only 20 at that time, so I think it was about £3,500 savings, and I literally I was due to go on a lad's holiday, and that was my money pretty much for the lad's holiday. Well, not all of that, obviously, but yeah, that was my savings at the time, and I decided to put it into the property. And then my mum and dad sort of lent me the rest, which I paid off over the coming years. So we had a £30,000 deposit, which went down, and then we borrowed the other 50 on an endowment type policy.
Yeah.
Which, yeah, basically, like I say, the rent covered it. So I had my mum and dad to pull on for sort of purchasing property, and my older brother had purchased something with my sister. Yeah, we just saw it in a shop window.
Yeah. But I mean, if you look back, like 30 years like this, it's still quite a sum of money to be put together.
Yeah.
So, but weren't there giving out, like 110% or 120% mortgages at that time?
They would have.
Yeah.
They would have been, because it was a commercial property.
Oh, okay.
So it was a commercial property with the flat above.
Yeah.
It was slightly different. So we'd got an endowment policy, which was basically like it's a repayment mortgage where you have basically a savings plan running alongside it that is due to pay off the capital loan at the time it not expires. What's the word? Not expires. Not when it becomes fruitful. I can't think of the word. After the term, it will have basically earned the money to pay the original loan off.
Okay. Yep.
And you said that property today is a HMO. Is that what you said?
Well, now it's got now we've still got the retail unit. There's an accountant's in there at the moment. The flat above is it still is a HMO as such, but that we're just literally only a couple of weeks ago I was looking to get plans to build that out as maybe convert that into 2 flats, and it's also got a large 40 foot by 15 foot storage unit on the back, brick built.
And that's in London somewhere, is it?
That's in Beckenham, yeah.
Beckenham.
In South East London, yeah.
Wow.
So you've probably seen some pretty good appreciation on that over the years.
I'd say now, yeah, that unit. I mean, so we built the unit out the back. Brick built a unit out the back. It was just basically a porter cabin previously. So we've got a retail unit which is separated to the storage unit out the back and the flat, and I would say that conservative value now would probably be at least 750.
Yeah.
And we paid 80. It was 82,000. I think we paid for it.
Yeah. Yeah.
So,
So
yeah.
you always win if you can stay for a long run in property game, I guess.
Oh, 100%. 100%. I mean, that's the rental money from that has seen me through the last 10, 15, 20 years.
Yeah.
In one form or another.
Buy and hold, right? Buy and hold. Never sell if you don't have to.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And, the other bonus of, as we all know, well, some people listening might not know, is, if you remortgage as opposed to sell, that's debt, it's tax-free money, right? You're not having to pay tax on that. Whereas if you sell it to realise that money, you got to pay a lot of tax. So you should always try and remortgage and hang on to it.
100%. Yeah. I mean, I won't sell anything.
Yeah. So what happened after that, Darren? You got that set up and the record store kind of tanked. So what happened after that?
We just rented that out. As I say, the shop was rented to a video game store or something, I think, at the time. And then it's gone through a couple of changes since. But for myself personally, I went back to the building game. I was a bit lost to do what I wanted to do. I hadn't wanted to do the mechanics, but lost art in that because of because I got made redundant 3 times from mechanics. It wasn't that easy to get into. Like I say, F1 technician is where I wanted to go. But I got lost art in the motor trade for a little bit. Went into building, done a bit of building labouring for a while. That dried up, and then went into American bank. All along this time, the money was I was generating rental from that property.
Yeah.
And then I bought. I met someone in the bank. Got together with her who was renting. Mum always said not to rent. Ended up buying another place in Bromley. That one. Moved into that, and then moved a couple of times from there. And yeah, pretty much that money I was earning I'd gone into the bank at this time. I was working in the bank. My partner at the time was higher up in the bank than I was, and earning reasonable money. And literally, the childcare was covered in about £1,000 a month. I decided to step away from the banking world and look after the kids, basically, because I wasn't earning. I actually remember the highest wage I got was, if anyone drinks Corona, Corona, Coppin, oh bloody hell, I can't remember the name now.
Are we going through the beer list now? Or?
Yeah, no, that's Stella. What's the other one? Kronenberg. Kronenberg is 1667, isn't it? Or you may not know that, but that was my wage.
1664, I think.
Well, it was 1664, yeah. No, that was my wage. It was Kronenberg. That's how I remember it.
Gosh.
Or not. It's been a few years since then. But yeah, it's, after tax and bits and bobs, I think I was taking home about 1,200 quid. So to be paying out £1,000 to look after my son at the time, I just thought, you know what, for 200 quid, I can go back and do a bit of DJing or entertainment world with my brother and sort of cover that extra 200 quid. And bring up my kids, basically.
It's quite a step from the labouring into banking. That was quite a jump.
Yeah, well, it's my sister, because the labouring had dried up. So, and it pretty much, I went in there just to be. My sister used to work in the bank, and her best mate was still in the HR department, and they were just asking about if there's any work for anyone. And it was literally all I had to do was just go and move. They'd move a filing room, so I literally just took all the files out, and it's a filing room. It's a huge filing room. So I take all the files out, then move the filing cabinets, and then put all the files back in, and that was like 2 weeks worth of work.
Wow.
And then after that, when I was there, they just went, oh, actually, we could do this or you could do that. And then eventually, I was a glorified T-boy in the bank for a few years. And it actually worked quite well, because the guys I was working with were old school traders. So coming out of the labouring world, finish at 1 o'clock on a Friday, and advanced networking, shall we call it, in the pub from 1 o'clock on a Friday, because all these boys were sort of old big shot traders from uptown. On a Friday, they'd finish and go in the Conservative Club from 1 o'clock. So it sort of, it gelled quite well in reality. And I was there, I was doing odds and sods and sort of generic filing and whatever for give or take probably about 4 or 5 months in the end.
And this was when? How far back are we going here?
Oh, blimey.
Going back a while.
20, yeah, I would have been in me 25, 26, I think, when I started there.
Okay.
So, yeah, about 3 years ago.
Yeah, you wish. You wish.
These greys are painted in, yeah?
Yeah. Yeah, you would have enjoyed Benidorm a lot more if that was the case.
Definitely. But yeah, so then, like I say, I had the property running alongside that. So it's, but we never, my mum and dad and older siblings were always like, they were retirement planning not investors, I'd say landlords. So
what was like their thoughts on that? I mean, what was the plan that they were trying to, sell off all their portfolios right at the end to retire? Was that the case, or?
Just the revenue, they were always, that's why they said don't sell anything, because the rental will basically be your pension plan.
Right. Okay.
Which is why I never sold anything, and that was their only mindset.
Yeah.
And I mean, I can carry on with where the situation went, because that's where I sort of ended up in Airbnb.
Yeah.
Is literally went through I had to go through a separation with my partner, and subsequently through that, I ended up paying out near on £250,000 to her, because she wasn't keen on staying in any of the houses. She just wanted to go. And I sort of stood back and thought, how the F did I do that? Basically, when I've still got, I was still only earning £1,000, £1,500 or whatever at that point. Then I've just paid out my ex-partner almost £250,000. And it's like, how did that work? And I was like, there's something a bit more to this property game than just leaving it as a pension pot. And then started looking into sort of creative strategies and refinancing and bits and bobs like that. And then sort of come across a couple of training companies, got involved with one of the biggest ones in the UK. And then just got involved with creative strategies and rent to rent. And and subsequently am where I am now with a number of rent to rents, which my mum would turn in her grave if she knew my rent roll, what I'm paying out, because they were always never rent buy. And if she knew what I was paying out in rent, which still troubles me a little bit with my mum on my shoulder saying don't ever rent, but you know, when I look at the revenue that's generating, and it's it's a good debt.
So tell us a little bit about that, Darren. What is rent to rent? What's the portfolio of rent to rents made up of? And and if you don't mind, sharing some of the high level numbers to kind of show what's possible, that'd be really interesting.
Yeah, no problem. Yeah, that's so I mean, obviously, for listeners who are not familiar, the rent to rent model pretty much is like a Ron Seal model. It does as it says on the tin. You'd rent a property from a landlord, and then look to obviously generate an income from that property. Yep. And the way I refer it to a lot of people, because when it comes to residential houses, a lot of people are like, well, how does that work? But it's pretty much exactly what I do on the commercial side, but in reverse, if you like. So I'm renting a shop. I'm just renting a unit to someone. And like at the moment, there's an accountant in there, and he's using that property to generate himself an income.
Yeah.
Obviously more to be able to pay the rent and obviously pay his staff and give them a bit of profit. So that's ultimately what rent to rent is. It's a commercial lease or a contractor.
Yes.
A commercial contract basically. But when it's referred to residential property, people are like, no, that doesn't work, and that's because of all the media saying about subletting, where it's not actually subletting because it's not an AST that you're taking the property under. So yeah, I mean that's obviously the model, rent to rent, and then I utilise that by renting landlords' properties and advertising them out on Airbnb and the likes, Booking.com, Expedia, direct bookings, our own website, and then I generate an income from that, enough to pay the rent, enough to pay the cleaners, enough to pay all the marketing fees, and generally speaking, I would look to have a net profit per month over the course of the year of anywhere from sort of 750 upwards. So ideally, we'd like to get $1,000 as a sort of minimum across the whole year. But it's a fluctuating business as well. So, you get the holiday season, everyone thinks Airbnb leisure guests. Well, there's a huge market outside of that in contractors and insurance guests and travelling corporate staff. So there's not just the leisure market involved, and that's where a lot of people may think they need a certain type of property to be able to do Airbnb, but that's not the case. But yeah, to give you an indication of sort of numbers, I mean, some of the properties I'm renting are, not far off the £3,000 mark, and I can revenue. The best month I had on a property was about 11.5 grand revenue. Wow. And I think that was net profit to me of about 3.5 to 4 grand. That was one property. That was a free bed. And just to give clarity on that, that was the month of the Queen's Jubilee.
Wow.
It was an exceptional month. I think one night it's a free bed apartment on the River Thames. And I think one night we got £640 for one night, which I actually felt guilty charging. But, it come through Airbnb, so the guests who booked it were happy to pay it. So
supply and demand, right?
Yeah, exactly that. And that was five women travelling that was actually the weekend of the Queen's Jubilee. Yeah. So that was a peak of the month, if you like.
And still, those 5 people, if you put them in 3 hotel rooms, at that time of the Queen's Jubilee, what are they going to be paying? Probably more, exactly. A lot more.
More than £1,000, I think. So.
Oh, they were well happy with it. Yeah, that's it. 5 people, £100 a night. That was one night.
Yeah. So like around where I am, we had like some events near Farnborough, like an air show. And, the nightly rate for a hotel has gone up from, let's say, 80 quid a night. Let's say this is a DoubleTree Hilton hotel. It's gone up from 80 quid a night to £400 a night.
Wow.
This is in Woking.
In Woking, God blimey.
Yeah. £400 a night, Darren. Just for that 1 week of the event. Yep.
That's what I say. What I would say, though, anyone looking to get into the rent-to-rent sort of Airbnb style business, there are some very lucrative numbers out there, but you have to you cannot look at a rent-to-rent SA business or serviced accommodation, they call it, which is basically Airbnb, Booking.com. That's you can't look at it for them peak months because you have to balance it out over the year. Which is why I say,
Yeah.
1 month I made 3,500, but then another month
The
on
other
that
months might
property
drop.
I made 1,200 quid. So
Yep.
it's average over the year £1,000 basically. I would say net per property.
Per property. Yep. Which is still massive for, massive amount for massive margin, rather than having to use all of your money to buy property first. It's
100%.
quite, yeah.
Yeah. Yeah.
And I think also the one of the biggest things to consider is that not only are you making more than the average median wage in the UK, but you're also able to do it without having to be there for 10 hours a day, right? Like you would with a normal job.
Yeah.
So I think that's one of the biggest advantages of Airbnb is that you can make money without physically having to be there, which then frees up your time to actually enjoy life. For me, that's the biggest thing about the business, the biggest benefit. It's not completely passive. I don't think anything really is, unless you're, a best-selling author or creating a world-changing product. But it's reasonably, it's better than most things with regards to, passive income compared to a job.
What you're trying to say, Alex, is doable for everyone. Is that right? Like
Yeah,
anybody
of course.
can come in. It's not,
Anybody can do it with some education and some knowledge and just a bit of momentum and determination. So Darren, tell us. I personally think that the biggest challenge in this business, when we're talking about rent to serviced accommodation specifically, is finding the properties. I think finding the properties is tough. I think I don't think it's talked about enough. I don't think it's emphasised enough. There are a lot of people doing it. What me and Pooh have said on this channel and throughout all the trainings that we're going to put out, we don't want to just dress this thing up as all bells and whistles and, rainbows and butterflies. There are some hard points to this business. So how did you go out and find these properties? What's your kind of your best thoughts around that? Where do you begin?
Well, I mean, the first thing, you hear it, a lot of people say it, but basically just tell everyone what you do. Just sing about what you do, because no one's going to know about you if you're not telling them, basically. Tell everyone what you do, go networking, get to property events. You've got to meet the landlords to get the property, so put yourself where the landlords are. And literally, the marketing is the biggest thing, and I got, majority of my properties have probably come through word of mouth. I've tried the marketing, tried the leaflets, but the issue, and I agree with you very much, Alex, getting the properties is exceptionally difficult because whenever, it's crazy. I'm a landlord myself. I've got some commercial lets and HMO and single lets. And when you explain the benefits to landlords of what we do and try and take it on as a company let, they get really nervous and think it's some sort of scam. And that's the hardest.
Too good to be true, right? Too good to be true for them. Yeah. That's why they think it's a scam.
Yeah, and they think that, ironically, oh no, I'm not putting a company in there because I'm not going to get paid and this, that and everything. And you're like, hang on a minute, if you put a tenant in there who doesn't pay, you're going to have a much harder job evicting them than you are evicting us if it was to go wrong. We're a company. We've got no rights in the property as a under an AST, under the Housing Act. So, if it was to go south or it wasn't going right for you guys, you can just ask us to leave and
terminate.
We can terminate it pretty much a lot easier than a normal AST. Yet they don't see that, and you're like, they moan about tenants, and all they see is the monthly amount.
Darren, do you find that like a lot of landlords are worrying about like you're going to make a lot more money than them? Have you come across that one?
Yes, 100%.
And is that like quite a main concern that they would not give out the property to you because they worry so much that how much you're going to make on top of them?
Yeah, they see the revenue figure. Like I say, if I roll back to that 11.5 grand month I had, I paid the landlord 2,600. Bills were £500. I had to pay the cleaners and the marketing costs. So, on top of that 2.5 grand, this is what the landlords don't see, is we have we have a lot more expenses. My expenses that month were probably, excluding the rent, were probably about £3,500, which sounds a lot. But then, like I say, you look at the revenue, the revenue counteracts it. But as the revenue goes up, we're going to incur more costs because the likes of Booking.com and Airbnb, which everyone understands, is they take a 15 to 20% commission, sometimes more if you choose.
Yeah.
So the landlords just see the revenue figure and don't realise that you've got to pay cleaners and bits and pieces like that. I actually had a landlord who I had a management deal with, so I was basically paying him a profit share of what I managed it for him. But when I detailed all the revenue and everything to him, he thought he was paying for the cleaning. He didn't quite understand how the model worked, and I think that's quite a common objection with landlords. Is they're like, oh well, you're getting $7-8 grand a month for it, so why are you only paying
would
me
you break that kind of conversation? Do you tell them in advance about this? Like, this is how much I'm going to make in the property. I mean, or when you approach the landlord for the first time, and would you have those kind of conversation, or you just?
No, I wouldn't share. I wouldn't share the revenue I'm making with the landlord for that very reason. I would just explain the benefits of what we do. And like I say, we're not tenants under the normal sort of tenancy agreement. We look after the place. We're in and out there. My cleaners are in there a minimum of every 2 weeks. So, the house is kept in tip-top condition, basically.
Yeah.
But they just, it's old-school thinking because, let's be honest, majority of landlords are sort of in their later years, and traditionally they've only been doing buy-to-lets, single lets.
Why do you think? What is it that you think makes landlords trust residential AST contracts more than working with you as a business? I come up against the same barriers all the time. Speaking to agents and even landlords directly, and they say, we just want to have a family in the property. And even though you explain the benefits and the fact that those tenants are not going to care for your property like we will, because for them it's a stopgap, it's a temporary solution. They're looking to buy a home or they're looking to move on. For them it's temporary. For us, we need to make money from this property, so it needs to be a show home all the time. But still, it's hard to kind of get that into their heads. And it's almost comes down to trust, I think. But it's trying to understand why is that? What is it that they don't trust about us? I think that's the key.
What's your
thoughts on that?
Yeah, it is like you say, it's a bugbear of what this business is just getting the properties. I think it's almost like when you try and change banks, you can't be bothered with the hassle. So they know that a traditional single let, buy to let works, and they're not used to, like, the minute we start saying, I think their biggest fear is a lot of people coming through the house. Whereas they like to know, oh no, I just like to know there's a family in there. And even though we explain that, that basically they're not, if they're misbehaving or damaging the property, we can basically call the police because they're trespassing because they've broken our terms and conditions. I think they get very emotional about their properties. And that, I think, is the biggest hang up for a lot of them. Even my very own family included, my sister just doesn't do it. And in my head, it's a box. It's just a box that generates you money. I'm not personal about none of my properties because it's like, it's just a vehicle that's going to make me money. And at the end of the day, what's the worst that's really going to happen? Even a tenant or a guest, they're not, unless they're sort of, I don't know, obviously we avoid having parties, but, unless they're sort of swinging a chainsaw around the place for sort of 7 hours, what sort of damage are they going to do? They might they might break a door handle or pull a door off the hinge or, smash a hole in the wall. But in all reality, if I'm making £1,000 a property per month and I've got a sort of £300, £400, £500 repair, get a plaster in there to repair a little hole in the wall, it's nothing.
Well, this is the thing that, and sometimes I'll be honest, right? This is all about being honest. I do get frustrated sometimes talking to agents because it's one line that really gets me, and it's when they say this particular landlord doesn't want to do a company let, because they're quite emotionally connected to the property and they want it to be really well looked after.
Yeah.
And I just want to rip my head off, because I want to say, that's why you need us. That's why he needs us, because this is what we do. The people that you're going to put in there are not going to look after it like we are, and potentially they're going to fall into arrears. They're not going to pay the bills. They're going to let it go into wear and tear, and then potentially they're just going to take off and they're going to leave it trashed. But they don't relay this information to the owner. And I think another big problem is that a lot of landlords, especially accidental landlords who aren't in the business, right? They've just inherited a property or whatever. They don't understand the massive power shift that takes place when that tenant signs that AST contract, and they're literally handing over that property, and they think that that they're protected, but they're not. The power sits with the tenant, and that's why I try and explain that with us, with a company, as you said earlier, we don't have that kind of power. If we're not following what that contract says and paying our bills and meeting our commitments, then we've got to go. And that's the biggest sell, I think, in what we do. Landlord's always protected.
I think as well, you're touching on the point with agents. I mean, let's be honest. I'm not a fan of agents, because I say that I don't want to sort of tarnish anyone, but basically agents are just salespeople, and I think that's the misconception that landlords and even vendors that are selling. I think it's a misunderstanding that they believe that they're property people. They're not property people. They are just salespeople. That's it. At the end of the day, you very rarely will find an estate agent who is a property professional. I mean, if you actually ask let's be honest, straight out of school, it's a quite easy job to get. It's a sales role. They're in there. They're just interested in their next commission. They don't care that what we're giving the landlord is better. So they're just like, it's like you're breaking them. It's like, what are you saying? No, I just want to put a family in a single let in there. Sorry, we don't do that. Yeah. And like you say, that's what really frustrates me is, having been an estate agent for a while, I did have a spell of trying that in that commercial shop I got. But a long story, that it didn't work out simply because I had a lot of family issues and we lost 7 relatives around that time. I'll spare you the dramas of that, maybe for another episode. But it's a very much dog-eat-dog world. And the thing that annoys me is when you go into an agent and say, this is what we do. Oh no, our landlords don't do that. It's like, well, have you actually asked them? And they
immediately write you off.
Yeah, and it's like
the landlord, because they don't want to do it.
But they have an obligation to report to the landlord, right?
This is what I'm saying, and this is what I say to them. I say, have you actually asked the landlord?
Yeah.
Because it's not your decision to make. I know, but we know they won't do that. Okay, but
But have you asked him?
Can you ask him, please? Because we need some properties, and it's better for you because we're not going to be troublesome tenants. We understand property. No, they won't do it. You're like, no, but ask them. And I've actually had stand-up rousing, well, not rouse, but discussions with agents saying, look, your client is the landlord, so surely you want to do what's best for them, because without landlords, you've got no business. So why don't you just at least present it to them and let them make the decision? You're still going to get paid for us. But they then start thinking, we're going to steal the landlord.
I think at the moment anyway, and hopefully things will change, but I think at the moment it's a bit of a perfect storm as well, because it's hard for us. We don't really have much negotiation power when there's 30 people kicking the door in on every rental property the day it comes on. So they're not desperate. There's no, that's the hardest part, even though we know it's better. And that's what I say to agents. When I do my pitch and they say, sounds interesting, but we've already had 30 people view the property. And I say, look, this conversation is not about whether or not you're going to rent the property. It's about what's best for the landlord. I'm not debating that you're going to rent the property today. Of course you will. I'm just asking that you put forward this information to the landlord as well. So he's got all the information to make a balanced decision. But a lot of the time that information, whether it's right or wrong, just will not reach the landlord's desk. It won't.
No, I mean, that's why it's, obviously that's where we sort of try and get the direct marketing in, which I'm sure you guys do. And it goes back to what I said, tell everyone what you do, because especially on social media, if you're posting bits and pieces and the benefits it brings, landlords will see that, and you'd like to think that would pique their interest, and potentially reach out to you via Facebook posts, pretty much.
Yeah.
So do you reckon that Facebook would be the best way forward for a lot of people, just to reach out to the landlords and kind of
to share
get your words out, is that right? And
to share what you're doing, I'd say 100%, yeah, because especially for the older landlords, I mean, all the sort of TikToks and Instagram and X now, isn't it, Twitter and all that business. I mean, I'm of the age of a landlord, and I don't sort of 40 to sort of 60, I'd probably say is a sort of average age of landlords. I don't think they're going to be that active on the more newer platforms, whereas Facebook is sort of stood the test of time. And a picture can talk 1,000 words. So, if you're putting pictures of properties out there that you're running and operating, a picture will draw your attention, and then they sort of have a read and just pique their interest, basically.
I think one of the biggest challenges around that, Darren, for people who are listening who want to get into Airbnb is until you get started, you're kind of living in that world of imposter syndrome, right? You're nervous about putting out posts saying, guys, I'm in property, this is what I do, da, 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 da. You haven't got anything to document. You've got no case studies to present. So what would you recommend to somebody who's just starting out? Maybe they're just renting a place, their back's up against the wall, they're trying to build this as a side hustle, and they've got that imposter syndrome. How do they begin kind of selling themselves on social media to get their first deal?
Yeah, good question. I mean, I'm all about helping people. If anyone wanted to reach out to myself, they could happily just sort of almost advertise themselves under my umbrella initially, just to get going. Use some of the properties and potentially say, I'm working with this company or this business partner or whatever they want, and sort of utilise what I've already done, and then to a point of almost just use my brand or my pictures or whatever just to showcase what's possible. But obviously they'd have the contract, and just if they're doing it, just be honest to a point when they meet the landlord, because property is a people's business, and people will only do business with people they know, like and trust. So be real, be who you are. Say, use my post, and don't lie that it's theirs, but just say this is we're working alongside a company providing lets, and just sort of share the pictures. And just utilise it that way, and then get in front of a landlord and basically become friends with them, build rapport. I mean, it's convincing the landlord that you're the right person to rent the property to. So, but I appreciate when they've got nothing to showcase. Where I say I'm happy if they want to steal a couple of my pictures, as long as they're not saying it's theirs. But if they admit they're just getting started,
just be honest, and just be real, be you. So.
Yeah.
I think as well, something that's worth kind of pointing out is when you're new and you're just trying to get into this business, probably the same as any business, you're a bit nervous, you're not really sure about what to say, you're having your first conversation with a landlord. It's natural that you just end up just basically verbal diarrhea for 20 minutes. The landlord's sitting there thinking, what's this guy going on about? Way too much information, way too much overload, all the details pouring out. And it's important to say, just listen, right? Don't say anything. Ask a few questions. Try and find out the pain point as to why you're sitting there across from the landlord, and let them speak, and then simply address their problems. Wouldn't you say that's kind of the best way forward?
100%. Yeah, you've got to solve their problem, basically. And like you say, you've got 2 ears for a reason, and 2 ears and 1 mouth for a reason, haven't you? So listen first and sort of talk later. Yeah. And even if it's just like I say, I mean, reach out. I'm happy to sort of help people when I can. If they want to go and sort of gather some information, and reach out to me, and I sort of help guide them on whatever. But yeah, find out what the pain points are, 100% from the landlords, and just see how we can fix it. And if you are new to it and you're listening, if you're going and chat to that landlord, just if there's any questions you're not sure about, or just say, look, I mean, don't necessarily say you're new, because sometimes that might put the landlord off, but just say, great question. The guys in the office deal with that. Let me just check and I'll get back to you. So if there's anything you're not sure about, rather than, like you say, verbal diarrhea and coming out with something wrong and over-promising something you're not sure of, just say, I've just got, well, not just got started, but just say, the guys in the office deal with that, so let me find out and I'll get back to you. One, it makes you look bigger. And and two, obviously, it's you're not misleading the landlord with information you're not sure of. So,
Yeah. And an important note is to make sure you park your moped down the side street, so when you leave, they don't see you. Don't see you leaving on Just checking with the office. I'm just checking with the office, checking with the staff.
yeah.
When you leave on your little push bike, yeah. Be careful of that one.
Yeah.
Cool.
Darren,
So
has this, Airbnb or service accommodations, has it made a difference in your life right now?
100%. Yeah. I mean, it's like I said. I mean, when I went through all the troubles with my ex-partner and all that, it's literally had to start again, and that's when we started the estate agency up, and that, for whatever reason, failed purely because we weren't focusing on it because of everything that gone on around life, and then COVID hit, and it was like we got out of that, and I was like, right, now I'm sort of back down to the bare bones, scraping the barrel, and it's like, right, I've got to look at a low input strategy that's going to generate a high revenue, and that's when I come across the sort of rent to SA model. And yeah, I mean, I got myself involved, got mentored by some guys. One of the training companies in the UK, got mentored by them, just because it was a completely different strategy. And massively changed my life. It's generating substantial income now. It's been challenging, like you say, just getting the landlords on board. It still is challenging to get landlords on board. But ultimately, now it's a little bit more understand the model. It has its ups and downs, but that's like I say, you've got to balance it out, ride the waves, as it were. Be brave with it, because it does. One thing I will say about service accommodations, you have to be brave because the figures are so fluctuating. Sometimes you might be sitting there looking at an empty calendar, but then the next day you might get a 3-month booking in.
I just had exactly that. I had 2 large properties, empty, nothing in the pipeline, was getting worried. And then almost on the same day, I took 1 booking for 3 weeks. And then in one of the properties, and then in one of the other properties was a month, and they just both dropped in almost on the same day. One was for 6,000, the other was for 6,000 or 7,000. So yeah, 100%. It's the way it goes, ups and downs.
Yeah, definitely. You have to manage your calendar and manage your cash flow well to see you through the sort of lower months. So it is a business in its entirety, and yes, it can be quite hands-free if you have the right systems and team in place. Mm-hmm. But initially, I mean, myself included, the first one, I was out, first guest come in, it's like, all right, I was over there with the kids and the missus cleaning the property, and it's like rubbing around with a mop and getting the kids sort of wiping the windows down and all that sort of business. Coming back, cleaning the linen, going back, changing it. Yeah. That was when I was first getting involved in it. And then it's like, right, hang on, you can't do this. If you want to scale, I can't be doing that over 4, 5, 6 plus properties.
Yeah. Mm.
So I immediately started the way I wanted to intend to go on, and just got a cleaning team involved. And yeah, I haven't really looked back, to be brutally honest, on that side of things. So no, it's
So what's your day like, Darren? Like these days, what's your day like?
You know what? It's actually it's quite. I'm educating myself, further educating myself on bits and bobs. Looking at doing my own sort of mentorship and membership sites, sharing my knowledge. But for me day, I actually get busy doing nothing, which sounds really odd. But I don't have to do much. I wake up, I'll check the calendars in the morning, make sure people are checked in. There's no sort of messages from anyone. The VAs, the VAs or the office would have picked up on any sort of major issues. And then pretty much just look to maybe tweak the process a little bit, see if I can. There's ways and means to smooth the payment process. I'd say maybe just tweak the system a little bit and look at more properties and try and convince more landlords. Build a few social media posts, just trying to get some more properties on.
So where do you go from here? I mean, do you want to scale more units, or are you looking into more like at the mentorship side, or is that the focus is going forward?
I love property, so I talk property all day long. I'm looking at more sort of creative strategies as well around sort of, there's plenty of new issues. The biggest thing that's going to be coming is tenant buyers. which is basically rent to buy. With the way the market's going at the minute, it's going to be a lot of opportunities there to help people as well. Landlords rates have gone through the roof. They're going to be looking at different strategies. So I think with the extra revenue, there might be a lot of management deals available coming up, because the way the rates have gone up, I think potentially landlords are not going to be making as much money as they thought they were, and they'll be looking at other avenues to generate more revenue. So, but for myself, I'd look to get I want maybe a portfolio of 10 or 20 sort of rent to SAs, and then I'll be looking at purchasing. I'd like to end up with an apart hotel in somewhere like the New Forest, or up in the Cotswolds or something. And then I'm still excited. I'm viewing a property tomorrow, 1.6 million property in southeast London that's potentially going to be able to convert into 2 flats, which I would either then run as SA. So I'm looking at it as a whole package for the landlords, and then run the 2 units as SA units. Obviously convert it as well, and just property basically.
Yeah.
But yeah, I don't want to. I've got the SA business. I'd like to have up and running, or it is up and running, and just generating as much of a passive income as it possibly can by ways of having systems and a VA, a team running that, and then just focus a bit more on getting the apart hotel, getting a few
more into developments. Yep.
Yeah, a few developments going, and then obviously spend a bit more time. Well, I spend a lot of time with the family now, but take them away on a few more exotic holidays. See a bit
Benidorm
more. Benidorm first off, yeah. No, we're looking to plan a big safari out of South Africa next March for the family.
Nice.
So that's the first one.
So what we're trying to promote here with what we're doing here, Darren, is obviously you're a very passionate full-time property investor with big dreams, big aspirations, where you want to get to with building quite a reasonably high level of wealth, which is great. But also on the other end of the spectrum, the rent to serviced accommodation model is perfect for anyone who just simply needs to make, let's say, an extra 1,500 quid a month, right, to meet their outgoings as the cost of living goes up, or to go a little bit further, take on 2, 3, 4 properties and have an extra, £3,000-4,000 a month to massively change their life. And there's not really that much need for people to go any further than that if they're not necessarily hugely passionate about property or want to build a massive portfolio. Just to use rent to SA as a strategy to create more income, it's really about as good as it gets, right? In the property world for the different strategies.
I'd say so, yeah, 100%. Like I said, it's the lowest input, highest revenue property strategy that's out there. They got the rent to HMO, but that's evolving tendencies. And if you're not a landlord, never been a landlord, I'd tread cautiously there, because there's a lot of regulations and you could get unstuck very quickly. Whereas rent to SA, you're not as exposed because of the regulations that are there. You're pretty much, you are renting from a landlord. That's your biggest exposure. And one thing I will say, when I was looking, and the biggest fear, if anyone's operating in London, and like I was saying earlier about my mum always told me never to rent anything. When you're looking at a property that's maybe 2-3 grand a month, you immediately think that you're liable for that amount. But trust me, you will, if you get your property right and get the images right and everything, and get it onto the likes of Airbnb and Booking.com, you should at least be getting 50% occupancy for the month. So therefore, don't look at the actual rental amount as what you're brutally liable for, because if you're getting 50%, you should be breaking even at around 50%. So, you might only get the first few months, if you're getting started, you might only get a handful of bookings, but that £3,000, say, rent, you might only be liable for because you might only be liable for a few hundred because you've pulled in £2,500 worth of bookings.
Yeah. So it takes a little time to get the momentums up, and then you should be self-run from there on. So.
Yeah, it's just that mindset. And it is a big barrier, especially in London. In London, surrounding
big numbers.
It's a big number, yeah.
They're a big number. And even myself, I've been doing it years. I still get nervous. This one I'm looking at might be $4,500 a month for like a big house, and you're like, it still makes you get that sort of, hang on.
Yeah.
But again, so I've still got to address my mindset on that as well. And even though I've been doing it for years and a couple of years and knowing that it's, the money is there and the bookings are there. So, it's a fear that I still have.
It's a very difficult mindset to change, because it's like you said, if the property is 20,000 a month, as long as you're renting it out for 25,000 a month, you're making money. But it's scary, right? But it's just understanding the numbers. And as long as what's coming in is more than what's going out, then it doesn't really matter what the numbers are. But there's still an understandable fear attached to that.
100%.
But would you say, because obviously we're making, massive revenue in this case, would you say this strategy is quite a high risk, high return in that case? But it's low entry, low point of entry. But
I mean, everyone has a different appetite to risk, but I don't know, I'd say high risk, definitely high revenue. At high risk if you don't know what you're doing and you're trying to do it yourself, yes. But, reduce that risk by following people who are actively doing it, getting mentorship from people who are actually doing it, myself included. And I know you guys might be looking at doing a similar thing. But network with people who are doing it. If you're not got appreciate the cash flow might not be there to get involved in mentorship straight away, but get to networking events, find people who are doing it, get involved in groups, listen to these sort of podcasts, to give you that confidence to know what's out there and what's possible. And at the end of the day, none of us are getting any younger. You got just do it, basically. Just jump in and do it, because you're getting in your own way by not
doing it.
By not doing it, Don't you'll never be able to cover every base. It is a business, and it's going to go up and down, but it's a business that can generate you a huge amount of revenue. So don't ask yourself the what if this happens. Say, what if it goes right, rather than what if it goes wrong. Look at what if it goes right, because the revenue stream can put you in a much more better position than you might be in now. Cool. And to start, to be even lower entry, you could even offer to do, I don't know, I'd recommend it straight out of the gate, but if you've got a family member who's got a property, or you've potentially got a spare room in your house, maybe just try Airbnb and sort of get a bit of a feel for how the sort of management side. But you could offer to manage a property for someone, because then it's you haven't really got any exposure then, because you're just managing it. You're not even covering the rent or the bills or anything. So that's an even lower entry. But you have to be. I'd probably recommend more mentoring if you was just managing first, straight out of the gate. Purely, if you're not sure what you're doing, you could get not unstuck, but you don't want to get party guests and stuff like that. So there's ways to alleviate that. So, but management is even less input. Well,
Darren, as we approach the golden hour here, probably should look at wrapping things up. We know you've got a busy schedule ahead of you, so just wanted to thank you so much for coming on. It's been really interesting listening to your story, and very inspiring as to what's possible. Thanks for joining us on the Airbnb Nomads podcast, and we hope everyone enjoyed your story.
No, thank you. Appreciate you inviting me on, guys. It's been a pleasure. So hopefully it's filled people with some ideas, and reach out to us, and reach out to you guys or us or whatever, myself, and if you want any further advice, let us know.
Darren, just before you go, how do people find you?
So you can either, my business is Delta Investments, and I've got deltainvestments.co.uk, or alternatively just look me up on socials. I am on Instagram, Twitter, Facebook. Just look up Darren O'Reilly. You'll find me in there as a digital creator, and you'll pick out by the posts that it's me. I think I've got a flowery shirt on in my profile picture. So reach out to us, follow me. That'd be great.
We'll drop all the links in the show notes. So that's it for this week's podcast, and we look forward to welcoming you all back to the next one next week. And that's it for us. Have a great day, and we'll speak to you soon.